God it's summer. It's a time for grilling food, flying kites, and going to the beaches where residents and tourists alike go into the water. Next to sports, swimming in the water might as well be America's greatest pastime.
But in 1975, a film came out directed by little-known director Steven Spielberg that made people think twice before going back in the water. Considered the first summer blockbuster and a goddamn miracle that it even exists, this is Jaws. You may be wondering why I'm reviewing this movie in the pool. Well, there's a perfectly good explanation.
A rogue shark has come to Amity Island and begins picking off beachgoers one by one during the summer. Chief Martin Brody tries to shut down the beaches, but the mayor won't allow it since the town makes most of its money off of the tourist season. The shark refuses to go away and kills a few more people, prompting Brody to take action. Brody enlists the help of a shark hunter named Quint and an oceanographer named Matt Hooper, and together they set out to kill the shark. One of the greatest compliments I can give to this film is the amount of suspense it creates. For a shark movie, you really don't see the shark all that much, which makes it even more frightening for the audience as they wonder how big this thing is. We do know when it's around though, thanks to the John Williams music, which rapidly increases in speed when the shark closes in on its victims. Speaking of the music, this has to be one of John Williams' greatest scores. It's very simple, but its simplicity is extremely effective, and makes this film so much more terrifying. As a child, I was afraid of going back in the beach, and when I tried to conquer my fear, I always heard John Williams' score in my head. If that doesn't say he did his job right, I don't know what does. One of my favorite ways that Spielberg creates suspense in the film is when he begins to set up the death of Alex Kintner. First thing I like about it is that it could have easily focused on the kid, but instead the film draws your attention to Brody, and showcases the fear he has about another shark attack. Second thing that's done really well is how the audience gets a sense of that fear. The camera cuts closer and closer to Brody's face, with bathers serving as transition wipes. This obscures his vision, and also sets up more paranoia for the character when he continuously mistakes other people in the water for the shark. It's not about Kintner at this point, but it's about the fear of whether or not the shark is even there. That's just one example of Spielberg's art of suspense in the film, and the movie is full of those, specifically with the setting for the second half of the film, with our trio of heroes isolated at sea with no one else to help them when the shark is attacking. In this scenario, it's also important to make sure that the characters are well developed and likable enough to sustain interest. Again, this is something the movie succeeds in doing. Roy Scheider plays a very different chief of police than what is usually seen in media. As opposed to the gruff cops, Brody is a little bit more timid. He's generally more quiet than expected, though when something bad is happening, he is not afraid to spring into action. The character has some interesting things going for him, as he is blamed for not preventing the death of Alex Kintner, and going out to stop the shark is even more challenging for him, as he is afraid of the ocean. I find it a great thing in a character when the only way for them to accomplish a goal is to do something they greatly fear. Needless to say, Scheider plays his part well and is the true hero of the film. The other actors do a good job as well, with Richard Dreyfuss playing the smart and a little bit childish Matt Hooper. When I say childish, I mean the character reminds me of a grown child, in the sense that he seems really enthusiastic about his work. He kind of reminds me of Dan Aykroyd in Ghostbusters, but the man who steals the show is Robert Shaw's Quint. The character is basically that of Captain Ahab from Moby Dick, with a maddening obsession with capturing the shark. The man is smart, but it's kind of obvious that not everything is right in that head of his. Quint is also the focus of my favorite scene in the movie, which involves him giving the speech about his past on the USS Indianapolis. The speech is based on the true story of how the USS Indianapolis sunk to the sea and how the survivors were picked off by sharks one by one. The speech is so eerie partly because it really happened, but also because of how it was written and Shaw's delivery. It's written in the form of an old ghost story, something you would hear around a fire. The setup is even more similar to a campfire story with the characters sitting around a table. Shaw does a supreme job as well. It feels like the more he goes into the story, the more he gets sucked into it thinking he's still there. It's only near the end where he seems to come back to reality, cheerfully explaining the one plus side to the whole event. It's among my favorite speeches in all of cinema for a good reason. I said earlier that it was a miracle this film exists, and that is because Spielberg overcame major obstacles when making this film. The most notable one was the fact that the shark, nicknamed Bruce, would not work at all. In fact, the first time they put it in the ocean, it sank to the bottom and scuba divers had to bring it back up. There were two elements that kept the shark alive, however. The first being the music, which alerted the viewer to the shark's presence, and then there were the barrels that were attached to the shark when it was underwater. These two factors not only gave the technicians more time to fix the shark, but it also added in creating more suspense since the shark was never seen. When the shark finally showed up, it worked decent enough. It wasn't perfect, but it was still pretty cool, and since the film successfully built this thing up for so long and supplied so much fear in the story, you end up not caring what the shark looks like and land in the palm of Spielberg's hand as he takes you for one of the scariest rides of your life. With actors arguing with each other, budgetary concerns, and even the frickin' orca sinking at one point, it seemed like this would not only be a failure of a film, but also the death of Spielberg's career. Then the film was released, and the screaming began. Jaws was a huge success, going on to become the very first summer blockbuster. Do I even need to sum this movie up? The acting is good, the directing is fantastic, and the music is chilling. I think it's safe to say that Jaws is not only the definitive shark movie, but will probably be remembered as one of the best films ever made. So when you get a chance, sink your teeth into Jaws, but don't watch it before going into the water. You may regret it.
Thanks, this is an O.M.M review. This is O.M.M Oh no. The music. You know what that music means, right? It means that the shark is coming in.